Welcome back to Movie Guys Improvise. You are listening to
Chill with Realms.
Jurassic Mark.
Faerhad Targaryen. Last week, we talked about a 90s Disney film, which was a remake of an older film, Mighty Joe Young. We've all recommended it, and we all think that it's worth watching, so definitely go and check that movie out. If you have Disney Plus, it's viewable right there for you. If not, you can always rent it on YouTube. You can check it out there as well. Then check out our review of it on the podcast. And for today's episode, I wanted to take us to something that's fairly new, came out February of this year, before the lockdown. And it's another Netflix original based off of another source material, in this case, a comic book by Charles Foreman. And it's called I Am Not Okay With This. I believe this is the second comic book that Netflix has adapted that was originally made by Charles Foreman. The other one was called The End of the Fucking World. So fun fact, I heard that this show, I Am Not Okay With This, takes place in the same universe as The End of the Fucking World. I don't know if they ever plan to tie the two together, but the events in one show is happening in the events of the other. So that's a cool little thing. And about the show itself, the show itself has been described as a cross between The End of the Fucking World and Stranger Things, which I am a fan of and I have seen. So, this show was 7 episodes long, and I appreciated how each episode was kind of short. Like, I think the longest episode was even less than a half hour long. But having a show like this goes to show, where it just demonstrates how more is not always better, because there are other Netflix originals that have seasons that are like 13 episodes long, pacing issues. So just because you have more quantity doesn't always lead to more quality. To me, this show was relatively short in its episodes, but it was still quality storytelling. It's a coming of age drama about a 17-year-old girl named Sydney Novak who moved to a new town. She has a younger brother called Liam, who she affectionately calls Goob. She has a single mother because her father allegedly suicided in their basement, and she just has been really distraught since then.
Glad you said allegedly.
Yeah, right. She has a neighbor who seems to have a thing for her, who is a bit eccentric. His name is Stanley Stan Barber. And her best friend, her name is Dina, played by Sophia Bryant. Stanley is played by Wyatt Olive. I'm sorry if I'm saying that name wrong. Kathleen Rose Perkins plays Maggie, Sydney and Liam's mom. Richard Ellis plays Bradley Lewis, who is Dina's boyfriend, the jock, the MVP of the varsity football team. And there's also a few other characters who are important to the story, which we will get into later. But yeah, gentlemen, what were your initial impressions after I had recommended this to you for today's episode?
You already know what I thought. I got strong Carrie vibes. So I felt like this was Carrie, but with a twist.
Oh yeah, there have been a lot of comparisons to this horror movie Carrie, as well as the remake of It, because 2 of the actors in this show were also on It, which were the actors for Sydney and Stanley.
I liked Sophia Lillis's performance very much. I think she carried this show for me, and I felt that they really captured the look of Rust Belt America. Like, I'm from Rochester originally, and this part of the country definitely reminded me of the towns I used to drive through in like high school and whatnot. Personally, the show felt a little low energy for my tastes, especially for the creative team that made Stranger Things. But overall, I kind of felt ambivalent about this one.
Got it. Okay. So as far as the setting of the show goes, I kind of know what you mean, because I grew up also in upstate New York, pretty boring town of Poughkeepsie, right? And as far as the setting itself goes, besides like the physical place of it, Another thing that I kind of liked, what I kind of liked about the setting of the show was the setting, at least at first, was kind of ambiguous. They were talking about different time frames, which then, with more and more hints, you realize that it's totally contemporary. But at first, when you're watching it, you can't really tell what time place it takes in because the car that Stanley's driving, which is the car we see most of the time, is really
Mm.
old-fashioned. She mentions to the therapist who gives her the diary to journal in that she could just use her phone, which that's another
Mm.
hint that this is contemporary. And then at the
Mm.
end, the character Jenny name drops Instagram. So you know that this is taking place like, around our time frame. So, and I kind of see, JM, what you mean about the show being low energy. However, the the mind-blowing scene at the very end of the show, the climax, I
Interesting choice of
Yeah.
word.
Spoilers.
yeah, we are going to go into spoiler territory for but I will say, I guess I can see what you're saying about this being low energy, but I think with the climax of the show, the tone and the level of energy kind of shifted. And if they're going to continue, like I don't know if this is going to be renewed for a second season because this is based on off a comic book that only had like one issue and it didn't continue. The ending of the comic is also different, which we'll get into later. But
Mm.
if they are going to continue this story, I don't think it's going to be as low energy as season one was. If I'm interpreting correctly what you mean by low energy.
What I mean in this context is it felt a bit like the kind of storytelling you saw a lot of in maybe the early aughts, like Napoleon Dynamite and Juno, this sort of kind of very laid back type of story about disaffected teenagers. Uh, it felt almost like a throwback to those sorts of films. And I guess when I had heard that this was made by the people who did Stranger Things, that's not quite what I was expecting. But with that said, yeah, the literal mind blowing scene was shocking. Like that was incredibly well done, and yeah, that was definitely something that set the heart pounding. But I did feel overall the show was kind of lethargic. But maybe that'll change if they renew it for a second season. This could all be an elaborate prelude to bigger things to come.
Right. Okay. So one thing that I will say is that although this show has drawn a lot of comparisons to Stranger Things, I'm not
Mhm.
sure if the creative team behind it was in fact the same creative team behind Stranger Things. I could be wrong about that though. I think
Mm.
what the shows have in common is that they're both Netflix originals. But beyond that, I honestly don't know if they did actually have the same production or creative directors behind it. I honestly don't know.
I think they did have the same production company, like 21 Labs Entertainment.
Oh, okay.
21 Laps Entertainment.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't think everybody who worked on Stranger Things worked on this, but there was definitely some connective tissue there.
True, you're right. 21 Laps was behind both of the shows. And as far as the premise of the show goes, it can also come off as kind of generic. Or not generic,
Hmm.
just cliche, like this miserable teenager who is revealed to have superpowers, right?
Hmm.
You can easily draw that to Stranger Things 11 from Stranger Things, who has superpowers.
Oh, and that genre's been around for a long time. I mean, you could go back and watch Teen Wolf, which came out in the '80s, and it hit a lot of the same beats, with superpowers sort of being an analogy for
Bless you.
puberty.
Thank you.
Gesundheit.
Yeah, I only know about I guess I'm a little ashamed to say this, but I'm only familiar with the MTV remake of Teen Wolf that stars
Hmm.
Dylan O'Brien.
Hmm.
But yeah, what I was basically saying is that it's not a new trope showing that teenager struggling with identity, coming of age,
Hmm.
and discovering something about themselves in that they have superpowers. That's also like one of the easiest examples I feel like anybody can come up with is Spider-Man. He's a teenager and
Mhm.
has to deal with becoming a superhero while still going through the relatable things that teenagers have to go through, like going to school and discovering themselves, etc., etc. So that's not new. That's not anything new with I Am Not Okay With This. So the
They
show
actually
had
kind of they actually kind of played around with that. Like I liked when Stanley was sitting in the bowling alley with her, and he had all the comic books, and he was going over all the different ways the superheroes could gain powers. That was one of my favorite parts of the series.
I see. And speaking of that, I thought it was kind of weird how they didn't name drop any like real world fictional superheroes. I remember Sydney picked up a comic book in his basement and it said Not Men, which I feel like was a play on X-Men. Like, why didn't he just have like a regular X-Men comic? You know?
Hmm.
I don't know. That
He
was...
writes.
Yeah, might have been legal issues or something like that.
But if it
Although,
was,
yeah, I think you're allowed to at least mention them. So
yeah,
yeah, it still doesn't quite make sense.
we were just talking about Stranger Things, and X-Men is talked about numerous times
Oh
in
yeah,
Stranger Things. So I don't know how this could have been a legal thing, honestly, but I don't know. Maybe it was, and it's just more complicated than that. I don't know.
maybe they didn't want to invite comparisons in universe to well-known superheroes that have similar powers. Like, I don't know. You guys read more comics than I do. Whose powers does Sydney's slew of abilities remind you of?
Well, for me personally, I can't think of any like Marvel or DC superhero that her powers
Hmm.
resemble. I would say, if anything, maybe Professor X, because he has telekinesis powers, among other
Hmm.
powers, which is mind reading, mind controlling,
Hmm.
which we don't get the sense that Sydney can do that. But as
Hmm.
far as fictional characters who have superpowers go, she honestly reminds me the most of Eleven from Stranger Things.
Yeah. Well, and Carrie, like Realms was saying earlier.
Yeah, that's the first. That's the first one that comes to mind.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I got the Carrie vibes, and then when they all got detention, I got the Breakfast Club vibes.
Yes.
Oh yeah, total Breakfast Club vibes.
I was watching a few breakdown videos of this, and apparently this show has a lot of like references to 80s movies, two of the biggest ones being Carrie, The Breakfast Club. Another I think was Pretty in
Yeah.
Pink. So yeah, there's definitely homages to those things. But Rums, did Sydney remind you of any like any popular superheroes, or was it just those like other movies like Carrie in particular that she reminded you of the most?
Mm, yeah, I think that was about it.
Mm.
Gotcha.
I mean,
Okay.
when you said Professor X, and I was like, oh yeah, yeah, I can see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. But as far as a superhero goes, like known superheroes from other comic books, it was just him, honestly, that reminded me of what Sydney is capable of, which we probably haven't seen the full extent of what she can do, right?
Mm.
But going into the series itself, we get the first glimpse of her power when she makes Brad's nose bleed.
Oh yeah.
um, and I gotta be honest, I didn't totally hate Brad. He definitely did annoy me sometimes, and he had some stereotypical stupid jock high school
Mm.
student dialogue, like when in the biology class when he was talking about erect penises or whatever, and he was saying in his experience it's a lot easier to get an erection through like the hands of a female, something like that, right? And eventually it's revealed that he cheated on Dina, and I guess the show made itself look like, yeah, he's not a very likable guy. However, I didn't want to see him killed off so quickly. They probably were doing that because they wanted to set up for consequences in the future of the series, but I didn't want to see him end like that. At least not, I didn't want to see him gone too fast. But apparently in the comic book, I didn't read the comic book version, but in the comic, the way Brad dies is as he's about to say that Sydney claims to have superpowers, he looks like he's having like a brain aneurysm and just collapses. There's no like literal head explosion with Sydney and other students eventually getting covered in blood. That doesn't happen. So nothing really happens that implicates that Sydney telekinetically had anything to do with Brad's death. So
Mm.
clearly the fact that that happened, they're setting things up for the future. I'm just saying I didn't want him to die that fast, you know? I didn't want the character gone so quick.
She didn't want the character going that quickly.
No, she sure did not. She was horrified by what she had done. I think she was horrified for two reasons. Like, one, obviously, because someone dying the way they did right in front of her eyes. And two, knowing that the reason they died that way was because of her, you know?
Mm.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought they were gonna flesh Brad out a little bit. You know, I thought he was going to be a little bit more than a one-note jock and maybe have some depth to him. But yeah, by the end of the series, I didn't get the impression that he'd really evolved that much. But maybe that's why, you know, his death felt a little
Rushed.
disappointing, you know, because the actor who played him was really good. And you kind of got the sense that had they written him out to be more like Ben in Stranger Things, who starts out as a jerk, but then becomes nicer and nicer as the show goes on. This guy probably could have pulled off the same arc, but that got cut short. So,
Right. That's what
yeah.
you did a better job of explaining what I was looking for. Like, yeah, I wanted them to like add more dimensions to Brad, which they didn't
Mm.
end up doing. They just killed him off, which is what happened to him in the comics. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
But since we are basically talking about the end of the show, let me get into this as well. Another thing that I didn't like was when he took the microphone from the teacher, which by the way, why are they acting like this biology teacher is the only teacher at the school? The Mr. File, yeah, played by David Yoon. I'm sorry if I'm saying that name wrong.
Mm.
He's their biology teacher. He's also the one hosting homecoming, and Brad just grabs the microphone from him and he just takes it like, oh, okay. But he was drinking so much beer that he should have been able to smell the beer in his breath at that time, in my opinion. That could just be a nitpick. But once Bradley starts opening his mouth and talking about Sydney's diary, it becomes very clear that all Bradley is doing is bullying Sydney. So why do all the teachers just allow him to keep walking toward her, keep talking shit about her, and eventually allow him to punch another student, Stanley, who's standing up for Sydney, and allow it to continue? At that point, they should have stopped him. That is another thing I didn't understand, and I really, really didn't like.
Yeah, there's no security at this school, apparently.
Nonsense. Like, we also have to talk about the detention episode. Was the principal really, like, first of all, was the principal really serious about scraping all the gum off of the bottom of the bleachers like that? And second of all, like you said, there's no security. There was literally no supervision for detention. Is that, I never got detention in high school, and I'm not saying that for bragging rights. I mean, high school is high school. Like, that's ancient history for me. And the reason I'm saying that is because I don't know what detention was actually like. Was there really no supervision like that? I thought detention would be in a classroom, not in a gymnasium or auditorium or whatever. You know what I mean?
I never got it in high school. I got it in middle school, and we did have somebody supervising. So I don't. It just seems like that's always a convenient thing that happens when people get detention in TV shows.
Yeah, yeah, and
yeah. I think that might speak to a larger issue. The show sort of evokes a lot of these high school drama cliches that you see in a lot of other TV shows and movies, but it doesn't really do anything with those cliches. Like, you know, I can name a couple of other stories that had the homecoming embarrassment trope where like somebody reveals something really humiliating about a character in front of the whole school.
right.
And it's been done a lot, and I feel like they didn't really try to bring anything new to the table with it. They just wanted to put Sydney in like a really emotionally charged situation, and this was an easy way to do it. And like by the same token, you know, the detention where nobody is actually watching the kids, I felt like served the story but wasn't necessarily realistic. And it's also something you see in a lot of these teen movies.
Yes, it's something you see in a lot of teen movies and in other high school dramas. Like
Mm.
Realms and I, we were just talking about 13 Reasons Why, and also in that show, along with this show, and even I guess Stranger Things, which isn't really much high school, it's more like middle school, but still,
Yeah.
so many of the characters who are kids, who are students, are able to like cut classes without consequences, stay out late night without any consequences, or their parents hitting them up about like, where are you, when are you coming home, or whatever, you know. And
Mm.
when I was in high school, things were not like that. And I understand that the world is a very different place than when I was in high school. That I understand. But I don't know if the world has evolved to the point where parents are not texting. Because now, yeah, in this world, everybody has a cell phone, including probably high school kids. So in this world, I can't imagine that parents would not be texting their kids, where are you? Why aren't you coming home? Or like, or kids skipping class and teachers not
Yeah.
finding out about it and stuff. I don't know. I guess it needs to happen in order for parts of the story to come through, but I can't always suspend my belief, I guess, as a viewer. I can't always do that with these shows. At some point,
Mm.
it's just it's too hard to believe, even though I know I'm watching a TV show, but parts of it are supposed to be grounded in reality to make it relatable, to make it believable. And the things like this make it too convenient, you know? That's just me.
I feel like I wouldn't personally have minded so much if they had done something different with these tropes. Like if you're doing something creative and it's not strictly realistic, that can still be really fun to watch and entertaining. And you're more likely to let your disability or suspension of disbelief kick in. But here, they didn't really do anything new with these cliches that were never that realistic to begin with. I liked the VHS appreciation. Uh, I remember having like all those blockbuster like VHS tapes in my basement. So I'm like, oh, okay, Stan's got taste. But yeah, on the whole, I don't know. I think they couldn't decide if they wanted to imitate these other stories and explore them or just imitate them for the sake of like hitting that nostalgia button.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, as far as cliches and stereotypes go, the show also doesn't really do much new in that category. I think you were saying that earlier as well. Which is fine. A lot of things are cliche, but
Yeah, yeah.
it depends on how you execute the cliches, right? And sometimes the show is able to do that. You were bringing up Stan, and I just wanted
Mm,
to, I guess, transition for a second to talk more about Stan as a character. He's eccentric. He is likable. To me, he is kind of out of line and is annoying, maybe not on purpose, but
mm,
I feel like he should learn, or he should have learned at some point when he's kind of crossing a line and needs to
yeah,
give Sydney some space. Okay.
yeah.
The first thing I want to get into is that he is a major, major pothead. um, so I have definitely smoked some marijuana in my day. I will admit that, but not too much in high school. It's more of something I definitely discovered like after high school. However, I knew a ton of people who did smoke in high school, and Realms, you probably did too. We probably both knew a ton of people who smoked weed at our high school. I remember, that little trail when you like, if you walk to the high school, like there's this little trail. I knew people who smoked weed right there, you know? So,
Yeah, they definitely know where to find different places to do.
exactly. So, high school teenagers smoking pot, that's also nothing new. But the amount of weed he smoked, like, so the amount he was like prepared to do, I feel like made him a little advanced for a 17-year-old. But what do I know? Like, I wasn't that into it in high school, so maybe people were like that. I don't know. It seemed a tad bit over the top, and it didn't really add much to his character, which is also fine. Like, it's okay to just have a character who likes to smoke weed and it not have bearing on the story. That
And
was fine.
he had 4 clients.
He did.
Right. One was his cousin, technically, but da da da.
So Stan's got two jobs. He works at the bowling alley and he's a pot dealer.
Yep.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes. So he's the first one to discover Sydney's powers, And okay, his relationship with Sydney, like Sid is oftentimes very mean to him, and sometimes it's justified and sometimes it's not. And here's what I mean by that. There was one night where Sid's mom comes home late from work and she says to her, "Sometimes I feel like I love people who don't love me back." And she says, "Well, I guess you're aiming too high," which pisses her off, which causes her to make a crack in her room, like on the wall, right?
Yeah.
Literally. And that was harsh. Her mom was being harsh.
Hmm.
And Stan over here, who's trying to help Sydney because he's fascinated with her and also obviously has a huge crush on her. But why can't Stan sometimes just realize that Sid needs some space and you're kind of going over the top? Like when they're in the bowling alley and he's trying to rile her up, he sees that he has riled her up to the point where she's moving the bowling balls and the bowling balls are lifted. He could have just stopped right then and there and been like, "Hey, it's working. Turn around. Look behind you. These bowling balls are rising." He didn't have to go the extra length to talk shit about Sydney and Sydney's deceased father, which is what causes the bowling balls to fly toward Stan and crash against the wall, right? That's what pisses her off. But Stan does that anyway to test her abilities further. He didn't have to do that, but he did. So
I mean, he's a quirky pothead who's very aloof and has been a victim of abuse. So I can't
Yeah.
really say I expect too much out of him.
Yeah. Honestly, I think Stan's a little selfish. You know, he reads a lot of comic books and he just really, really wanted to see a superpower demonstration, even if it meant going too far with, you know, his taunts. And like there something he said in one of the early episodes kind of rubbed me the wrong way. You know, he was talking about he and Sydney were watching the football game and Stan was saying, "Oh, you know what, in 10 years these guys are just going to be regional managers or whatnot. They're going to peak in high school. There's nothing left for these people." And I was just thinking, Stan, it looks like you're pretty poor too, buddy. Or like Sydney's not doing too well either. Like you're not
Kind of.
exactly well off, and I don't know if they were trying to imply that you're great students or anything, but he seems to have a pretty high opinion of himself despite like his pothead affect. I think that might have figured into it too.
I kind of felt that way too, but then I kind of like later on,
Yeah.
I kind of felt like it was more of a image of his dad. He was kind of reflecting out there.
yeah.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I mean, his dad was a jock, so he probably resents that culture because of that.
Yeah, because he asked his dad about the prom. He said something about the prom, and then his dad was
Mm.
saying, "Yeah, I got it. My picture's still up there." And I forget what he said afterwards, but it struck
Yeah.
it struck like a realization like back to that
Yeah.
point when he said that. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, it makes sense. Something I noticed about that. So when we see Stan's dad, he's always sitting on the same couch, and I don't know if you guys noticed, but his dad's got like this Pittsburgh Steelers towel that he's like sitting on the couch, and like a lot of the people around town are wearing like Pittsburgh area sports paraphernalia. When we first meet Stan, he's wearing an Eagles shirt, and it's established the character doesn't like football. So I think he was just deliberately trying to piss off his dad by like wearing the gear of a rival team. Like that
Sounds about
seemed to
right.
be like the kind of guy he was. I don't know, maybe I'm just reading way too much into this. I miss football. But
This
it seemed like a deliberate choice.
very good point, JM. So
And the man.
Stan the man. JM, I think I agree with your overall analysis of Stanley in that he is kind of selfish after discovering this superpower that his crush has. He just wants to do more with that. And he's kind of talking down everybody at the football game. And even though like he has those beliefs already because of his dad, it's not really fair to everybody else on the football team and the people in the bleachers watching because he doesn't know all those people. I get what you're saying, and I agree with your analysis of him. He is kind of selfish and he does kind of say some kind of dumb things. His dad probably is abusive though. Like we see him with a black eye, and
Oh, he's definitely abusive. Yeah.
right, and homophobic too. We hear
Yep.
his dad call him the F word right before he leaves for Billy's party. I think that's the character's name, Billy. I'm sorry if I'm getting that character's name wrong. I think that's the character's name. Who's best friends with Brad anyway.
Hmm.
Ricky.
Oh, Ricky. Sorry, oh, wow, I totally messed that up. Sorry.
Ricky Berry.
Ricky Berry. That's the guy. Why did I say Billy? Billy is the character in Stranger Things. Oh my god.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're getting a little crossover here.
Right. But he's a completely different character. And I wasn't even thinking of him. There just happens to be a character named Billy in Stranger Things. Anyway.
I only remember it because actually I remember it for a weird reason. Like every time they said Ricky Berry, I kept thinking about Barry Gordy, the music producer.
Oh man, funny. But it got you to remember the name.
Ricky seemed like Ricky seemed like a nice guy, if I'm being totally honest.
He was, yeah.
He was like, yeah, he's telling Brad, dude, calm down. And he never really said anything mean-spirited that I caught. So yeah, I mean, hell, I could do with seeing. Well, okay, that I caught. I don't remember every episode verbatim, but
he called Sydney Firecrotch at one point.
Wait, what? How did I forget that?
Ricky Berry?
I don't remember that.
I mean, he was probably joking, but at the same time, it's like.
Oh shit! Okay, well then, never mind.
You can joke
Bad
certain
Ricky.
ways with certain people, but you can't joke certain ways with people you're not that tight with. And I don't feel like they're that tight.
Okay, you know what? I take it back. Bad move, Ricky.
He was also just getting Sydney's name wrong when they both showed up at the party, right? So,
yeah, true. He was like, I knew it started with an S.
S, yeah. On the topic of Ricky, which is pretty much all the other characters too. So after the head explosion and all the students are running around and stuff, we see Stanley wake up for a moment, look over at the dead body and all the blood, and then we see Sydney's diary, and then we see it disappear. So I wonder a few things. Who picked up her diary? It could have just been kicked around, which I don't think that was the case because people were running away from the dead body and the diary was right next to the dead body. It could have been Dina. Like we saw Dina just staring at the dead body for a while and we don't know if she continued to stare at it when the diary was snatched. Maybe it wasn't her. Maybe it was her who took it. It could have been Stanley himself who took it.
My vote is on Stanley.
Stanley, yeah. And if it was Stanley who took it, then he would fully understand why Sydney's not into him. He may have already started suspecting it, but he would fully understand it if he picks it up and starts reading it, right? It could have been, I'm just thinking of named characters. It could have been Ricky. I don't even know if Ricky was there, but if he was there, it could have been Ricky who picked it up. Because I feel like we can say what we want about the character, but I feel like he was enough of a supporting character that he deserves to have a continuing arc into the next season. Because his best friend was killed or just died in a really big...
He about to be the next villain.
He could be.
The protege.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe they'll pull a 13 Reasons Why, really figure out who killed Bradley or something. I don't know.
Or what the hell Bradley was trying to say before his head blew up.
Right.
Yeah. It could have been that mysterious stranger, too.
It could have been him, yeah, but if it was him, like, I feel like some of the people running around would get freaked out at this shadow figure that shows up in the auditorium. I don't know, but it could have been the Shadow Man.
I know exactly who it was.
Who?
It was the janitor.
The janitor!
The married janitor, yeah.
Gay married janitor, yeah.
That was one of the funniest scenes in the show.
It was.
The janitor's like, you're embarrassing yourself, kid.
I would like them to bring back the janitor character too, because bring back some personality to the show, which he kind of did, even if it was just for one scene. But
like the janitor's character reminds me of something. Never mind. Scratch that because I can't even remember the person's name right now. Never mind.
Well, if you do remember, then holler it out.
I got you.
Shout it out. Yeah.
I thought Liam brought a lot of energy to the show too. Like he was fun.
Yes, he was. I liked
Sid's younger brother.
Boob. Yeah.
He's cheerful, confident, seems like a pretty good kid. I loved his cooking scene where he like throws everything but the kitchen sink into a pot and calls it dinner.
Liam's loaded lasagna.
Yeah, I just needed an extra L.
I do also definitely want to talk about Liam because I have some theories. I mean, it's probably theories you guys have thought of as well, but I just want to go over or just like think about who else might have possibly picked up Sydney's diary. I think it also could have been Mercedes, who was Stanley's new date. She wasn't really that important, but if they decide to continue to have her in the story and wanted to make her more important, she could have been the one to pick it up. I really don't like how she walked away from him. Like, you said yes to him. Sure, he smoked a joint in the car, but it's not like you got out of the car then. You waited for him to finish smoking and then went into the auditorium with him, and you didn't dance with him. Why? You agreed to go with him, so you knew him to an extent. So I thought that was kind of mean of her to do. So could have been her who picked it up. It could have been the teacher.
Oh, the one that was staring at him the whole time.
Mr. File? The teacher?
No, the administrator who was supposed to be watching them in detention.
Oh, I think that was also the principal. Yeah?
Yeah, okay, it might have been the principal, yeah.
It could have been him. Yeah, so it could have been any of these characters. I think those are all the named characters, right? The only other one that comes to mind was that shirtless runner who was like the third person to ask out Dina at the homecoming. If they decide to make him a more important character, I don't know. If it's not any of these minor characters, then it's just a brand new character who picks it up, who none of us know who it is yet, who will just be important in the next season, right?
The reason my money's on Stanley is because we say he's a selfish character, but he did have some very unselfish moves within the series, like here and there.
I agree. I think he has done some selfish things, but he's not a bad guy. He's not a bad kid. He can be selfish.
Yeah, I don't think he's a one-note character, but I was just saying he can do some pretty selfish stuff. But
Right.
yeah, no, he can be generous too.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So whoever it is who picked up the diary will play an important role. The diary itself, the revelations of it will be important if there is a second season. Now, JM, you brought up Liam, aka Goob. So this little guy seemed really smart for his age too. I think the first scene we see him in, he's talking about like this superhero costume he's designing because of this bully who's harassing him at school, like threatening to beat him up, right? He talks very articulately. He has this cute little pet hedgehog who
Banana.
Banana, yeah. And it's implied that Banana is dead because of Sydney, but I don't really know if that's the case. I mean, she's freaking out in the basement because that's where her father was, but her powers reached all the way upstairs. Liam was not affected by it at all. Liam was totally fine. It's just in his hands, Banana died. The show is presenting it this way. I don't think it's going to be revealed later that it wasn't her, so it probably was her. Anyway.
Liam has a secret power.
Well, that's what I was going to get into. I feel like the show is pretty much very heavily hinting that Sydney has these powers because of her father, and if that's the case, you gotta think that maybe Liam has some powers that has not been manifested yet because he's just too young.
Yeah, we could have a family of supers like the Incredibles.
Possibly, yeah. So, but I agree. I agree with you, Jam. I think Liam might have been my favorite character. Yeah.
He's just nice, and he's like really mature for his age too. Like a lot of the time, it felt like he was the one who was looking after his mom and his sister, and not the other way around. And yeah, he was just perfectly charming. And dude, he had the confidence to go up to that like older girl. So props to you, man. Hats off to you.
Oh yeah.
He's trying to mac on Dina.
Yeah, he took the beating, and apparently she was into that. So all right.
Oh yeah. It looks like he has a thing for older girls. Like yeah, he was trying to look like he was trying to flirt with Dina as well.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
Check out my eye scar. He's like, you should have seen the
other guy. Yeah.
And he had his little robe on. He was trying to be a little Hugh Hefner.
Yep, be back by 8. Well, the party starts at 7:15.
And I don't even know how to cook, at least not by myself. And he cooked that all by himself. even if it is him putting a whole bunch of things together, still, it was a meal, and I can't fully even do that myself, so there's that. He got mad at Sydney for talking to the bully, and I don't know, I have mixed feelings about that. Like, I like that Sydney really loves her brother, but she really didn't have to go and do that. I don't know. I'm mixed with how I feel about that.
Could have done a better job.
We don't see much interaction between Sydney's mom and Liam, but on the topic of Sydney's mom, Maggie, I feel like Sid is a little too bratty with her. Like, she's moody, and I get that. Yes, it's a huge loss to not have a father around anymore, but she is supporting them. Like, she's paying for everything. She's supporting them, and Sydney throws out there like, I'm practically Liam's mom, which really pisses her mom off, understandably. Besides the one thing that Maggie said, which was, maybe you're aiming too high, like looking for love back. Besides that, I feel like she was being too bratty, and she should have cut a break to her mom. And I like that they kind of made up at the end when, like, she was helping Sydney put on the dress, and Sydney even says, I've been a dick, and the mom is like, yeah, you have. So
I think part of that is being 17.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
I was surprised that she said that line to her daughter and then turned around and she's like, yeah, you're always choosing your dad over me. I mean, when you say sideways shit like that, but I mean, at the same time, it seems like it's a back and forth thing, and I don't know who started it.
Yeah. Honestly, I think it was Sydney who started it all. I'm not saying she hasn't been through a lot. She definitely has, but I think she's a little too hard on her mom sometimes. That's just me.
Yeah.
We also basically find out that Sydney swings the other way, right? When she really has a thing for Dina and says, look at the bright side. You never have to put on that ugly jacket on again. She really has it out for Brad, and I feel like she's a little too hard on Brad too. Like, eventually it's revealed that Brad did cheat on Dina, but before then, I don't think Sydney has much of a reason to not like him other than to just be jealous of him, right?
Oh, that girl that he cheated on her with, did we mention her as a suspect for who could have grabbed the book?
Oh, no, we did not.
Oh, maybe.
I feel like she'd be a prime suspect, yeah.
Yeah, because she seems like the kind of person who would blackmail other kids. So yeah, if she had something like that, she might lord it over Sydney.
Jenny, I think her name was.
Jenny, yeah.
So, going back to the detention episode with Jenny, another thing that Sydney did that I didn't like she overhears the conversation that Jenny and Brad is having, which is revealed that he was cheating. And then Dina walks in, and obviously Sydney just blurts out what happened because she doesn't like Brad and she has a crush on Dina. So that's obvious that she's just going to do that to make Brad look even worse. But I don't think it was in her place to have done that. What I would have done in her shoes, I would have been like, Brad, I think you have something to tell Dina. It should be coming from Brad. It shouldn't be coming from herself. And she should have left it up to Brad to say it. I get why she did it. It's because she already doesn't like Brad and she wants Dina to break up with him. So I understand that. But I think she shouldn't have done that. Because
in the moment, it's hard to kind of make that call, like split second. But instinctively, she was just like, fuck that guy.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, if she didn't spill the beans and then, Dina found out later that not only had, her boyfriend cheated on her, but Sydney knew, she might feel betrayed,
Well, I'm not saying that Sydney should have just kept it secret. I'm saying that she should have forced it out of Bradley. She should have been like, you're hiding something from Dina and you need to tell her what it is right in front of them. Like in the locker room, she should have done that instead of her saying it herself. Because after that is when Bradley seriously has it out for Sydney, even though, hello, you idiot, you're the one who cheated on your girlfriend, Yeah.
That I didn't get. Like, I didn't get why he was so fixated on Dina to that extent that he would go to those lengths to torture Sydney.
Yeah.
Because he's a jock, right? He's popular. I don't understand why he wasn't like, all right, well, I messed that up. Let me try someone else, something like that.
Well, because then there was the rumor that he had the clap.
The
I mean,
class.
he could still try to get someone outside of the school, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
One other character we haven't really mentioned, kind of a minor character, was the guidance counselor, who's hinted at like also being kind of a stoner. Like she even hinted that she does it sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Sydney's trying to confess to her that she feels like she's being stalked. The counselor doesn't really take it seriously, but maybe the advice that the counselor gave was helpful. I don't know. I really don't know. She could have also, I don't know, Sydney could have also tried talking to the counselor about how Bradley is bullying her. I don't know. I really don't know. But the story had to be told in this way in order for events to unfold, to continue in a certain way, right? So it is what it is, I guess. I don't know if this is going to have any bearing on the story, but Stanley mentioning that the watchtower was built by like 500 men and 100 men died building it, right? I feel like if that were true, then the damn thing would be kind of haunted. But when Sydney is covered in blood, and we get flash forwards of that in the beginning of the show, I got to be honest with you guys, I did not see that coming at all. Even at the very end, even after Bradley says, let's just say tonight's going to be fucking mind-blowing, I still did not even see that coming. So I was totally surprised. And that's where Sydney goes. And then she comes face to face with the shadow character. It could be the person who ends up being the mentor figure, who Stanley mentions in his comic books is the character who, like, he asks her, has anybody approached you, like trying to mentor you? If not, I'll be your mentor figure. Maybe this character is going to be that. But he seems kind of sinister because Sydney asks, should I be afraid? And he responds, they should be afraid. I don't know. I feel like he's got some nefarious plans or something. It could just be a brand new character. It could also be her own father with a mask on or something, because it's also kind of implied, I think, that her father's suicide was set up or staged, right? Because there was some explosion that happened while he was a Marine, I think it was. And the enemy died, the soldiers on his side died, and the civilians died as well. He was the sole survivor. He became really messed up after that. Maybe he's not actually dead, and maybe the character we see at the end is him. Maybe, possibly, or it's a new character. Could be one of the two, right? And I think that's about it. I think that's covering pretty much everything. I don't know if there's going to be a second season. The first season was pretty successful, so maybe there will be, but I think filming of all types of TV shows and movies, I think have been put to a halt this year because of COVID, right? So I don't know if there even is going to be a new season, if it's going to come out next year or not. But if there is, I think some of these things are going to be answered. We're going to see who is this shadow figure. We're going to see who picked up Sydney's diary, and among other things, like what does Bradley's family do? How do you explain that? How do you explain a head explosion like that? Like, what scientific autopsy can you possibly conjure as to how this person died? You know, the only
reading the diary.
That's the thing. Yeah, the only logical thing I can come up with is somebody arguing that an explosive was implanted in his brain. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense. So the last thing I will tell you, gentlemen, is just the fact that in the comic books, the story ends with Sydney killing herself. And the way she died is the same way Bradley died. In the comics, she died by her head exploding. And that's the end of it. But obviously,
So that's a spoiler.
Right,
Damn.
sorry. So that's a spoiler for you, gentlemen, as well. So apologies there if you ever did plan to read the comic.
2 spoilers, 1 video. All right.
Oh my God. So obviously the fact that they changed the ending of the show, they have plans to continue the story if they ever do want to continue with it.
I think I'd read that Netflix did approve a season 2, but yeah, right now everything is in question production-wise, across the board. So we'll see what happens.
Fun fact, as closing statements, the actresses for both Sydney and Dina, both of their names are Sophia.
Yeah, I saw that.
Sophia Lillis has to be really sick of wearing fake blood by now. Between this and it, like that poor girl has just gotten doused in this stuff on like 2 different projects.
I've heard that comment thrown around as well, because there have been so many comparisons to It and Carrie and Pretty in Pink, other 80s movies, Stranger Things as well. Another thing I will appreciate
Yeah.
going into closing statements, I like how a lot of the characters are played by actual teenagers. Like other high school dramas are played by young adults. Like Hollywood has cast young adults as teenagers so many times these days that I feel like the audience sometimes has forgotten what teenagers look like. But a lot of the cast are played by teenagers, and I appreciated that as well.
It's not like the Karate Kid where the teenager's like 30 years old.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that just about wraps it up for me in terms of closing statement. Do you gentlemen have any other, closing statements as we go into ratings?
It was very interesting to watch. It gave me a lot of nostalgic moments, from the references that they used, and there was a bit of like I'd say a fair amount of points throughout it that made me laugh. Like one of my favorite Stanley moments was when they're sitting in class and I think Brad, he gets caught cheating, so he gets detention, and then Dina gets detention, and then and Sydney gets attention, and then Stanley, he just gets up and he throws everything on the ground, and he stands up and just grills Mr. Files, and he just like stutters, motherfucker. So yeah, I'd watch it again. I'd rewatch it again.
Awesome.
I thought it was okay. I didn't hate the show. I liked some aspects of it. It's just not really my cup of tea. It had great production values, and again, I think the acting all around was phenomenal. And I did really enjoy the special effects. The head blowing scene in particular looked really damn impressive. Like I've seen movies that were probably a lot more expensive to make that had far worse looking special effects. So that was well handled. I guess I'm just not a big fan of like disaffected teenager stories, stories about teens that are kind of apathetic and sort of sit on the sidelines. But, if you liked Stranger Things and Daria, you'll probably enjoy this one.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a good analysis, Jam. And I always appreciate on this podcast in general when we all have different opinions. Some of us might like the projects more than others, but how we feel about certain things. So I'm just saying, okay, I appreciate you explaining yourself and how you feel about it. And yeah, I think that's fair. That's more than fair.
Why, thank you. I appreciate you too. You're a lovely man.
We're all bringing the loving energy here in this podcast. Always
like Realm says, we're bringing that energy.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking Just don't blow up anybody's head. That kind of energy.
That's that no chill energy.
Yeah, that no chill energy.
Going into ratings, I definitely liked I Am Not Okay With This very much. I think it's very rewatchable too, and it's very easy to binge. And I would be excited for a season 2 if that ever does happen, coronavirus or not. I'm going to give I Am Not Okay With This, the Netflix miniseries, an 8.5 out of 10.
Oh, all right.
Woo!
Wow.
Woo! It surprised me because I really wasn't 100% sure what I was getting into, but it drew me in when it started incorporating like comics and heroes and the things that I enjoy. But I will only give it a 6 for now, only because of the fact that it kind of made me feel like I was watching like something that I had already watched.
Yeah.
Yeah. Aside from that, like they left it on a point where I am actually curious to see what happens next. Like they kind of made it like if Carrie actually turned out to be a superhero now where do they go from there?
Yeah. I think I've mostly said, I've expressed most of my feelings about this movie. Yeah, I've kind of said my piece. I think it's well acted. It's not the most original thing in the world, but it has its moments. I think I would have liked it a little more if it had either been more subversive or more energetic. As it is, I'm going to give this one like a 5.5, mostly because I thought Sophia Lillis just did such a great job. I might watch season 2 if the reviews are really good. Like, I think I'm just going to hang back and see what everybody else is saying before I decide whether or not to check out the second season. But yeah, as it is, it's all right. I've seen a lot worse.
Well, at this point, with a grade as low as that, I guess I'm just happy that you didn't give it the record low score that you gave the day after tomorrow from
Jeez.
last season of the podcast.
I'm gonna be hearing about that one for a while.
Until there's a lower score.
Oh,
Hey, until like somebody else gets chased down a hallway by a killer frost.
oh man. Well, okay. So, yeah, really different scores all around, which is cool. I like when we have, like I was saying, like varying opinions, so that's very cool. On that note, chill with rounds. What do you got for us?
I have nothing ready yet.
Oh, okay.
Uh-oh.
No. Okay, I do have a show, but I just don't have it set up on YouTube or anything yet. But it will be set up and ready tomorrow. So you should be able to have the link on there tomorrow when you post the video. But the show that I have in mind is Sword Art Online, and it's something that I just started watching literally like yesterday.
Sword Art Online.
Yes.
It almost sounds like a video game.
It is like a video game, which is why I decided to do it for this one. Since like I was originally going for like more of like a samurai type show. Like that's what I had in mind originally. But then I started watching this and I was like, yo, I know Farhad is gonna like this because or at least you'll like the concept of it because of the video game. So I said, let me just expedite this one to the front of the line and we'll see what you guys think of it.
Very cool. All right.
Okay. Sword Art Online.
Sword Art Online it is. For next. Okay.
Sounds like a DeviantArt page.
Yes. Actually, I thought it was that when I first heard about it.
He's just going to send us a file with like 8 pictures of katanas.
But brief description, it's about a bunch of people that they go into kind of like a virtual reality game, and then they find out that it's actually real now. Like if they die in the game, they die in real life.
Oh,
yeah.
The stakes are as high as it could ever be.
Yes.
There you go.
Okay. All right. So yeah, that'll be ready. You said tomorrow.
Yes, I am off tomorrow. I might actually do like a voiceover commentary on like the first episode, and then put the link in there. But we'll see if the juices flow tomorrow. If not, then it's just gonna be like last time where it's just got like maybe like the portions of the intro video and then the link. We'll see.
Sounds like a plan. Well,
amen.
That just about does it for this episode of Movie Guys Improvise. You have been listening to
Chill with Realms,
Jurassic Mark,
and Faerhad Targaryen. Thank you all again so much for listening to us, and catch us again next week.
Chill energy only, y'all.
Tap your inner velociraptor. I don't know what that means.
I want to make a velociraptor noise right now, but I don't know one. Yes.
Something like that. I don't know.
That was pretty good.
Why, thank you.
We out.
All right, we're out. Sweet.